universe, even a lot of stuff that Stan would take credit for. And then he went on to DC Comics and created a whole other line of amazing characters and stories. But he was a huge inspiration to me when I first met Peter Laird. We immediately bonded over Jack Kirby. We shared mutual respect for the guy, and that was, again, when I told my parents after reading so many comics, and they were like, "Oh my God, we're gonna have one of those kids that will never go out of the basement." Because I would tell them I want to be like Jack Kirby when I grow up, and it's like, you can never make a living drawing turtles, drawing comics. Turtles came later, but it's kind of funny. But he was an amazing guy. This is I like to show this. Commandy was one of the comics that Jack Kirby did when he was at DC Comics. And I love showing this because the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater was from a very small town in Maine was Planet of the Apes. And to me that was like, no, my sister wanted to see it, so she took us. She was older, and I probably should have seen it at that age, but I'm so glad I did because it had such a lasting effect. These mutant animals ruling ruling the world, and humans being reduced to this the lesser beings. So Jack Kirby took that concept and came up with an idea called Commandy, the Last Boy on Earth. And he survived this Holocaust in these underground bunkers when he came up. Animals, mutant animals, ruled the world. You had gorillas, you had leopards, you had apes, you had everything. And to me, that was just like the most fantastic place to tell stories in the world. And so when he was on his 100th birthday, they did a book called The Commandy Challenge, where they invited different artists to do a story based on that Commandy universe. So I worked on it with my buddy Freddie Williams, and it was so much fun. And there he is, the man Jack. I like to show this picture for two reasons. One, Pete and I got lucky enough to meet him a few times, and one of my favorite Jack Kirby stories is when it was 1986, we were at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was very small. I think they had, at that, it's about 250,000 people these days. And this particular year, they were hoping they would get 7,000 attendees. And so we heard, we were sitting at our table, we heard Jack Kirby was in the building, and Pete and I dropped all our stuff and we ran over to where he was sitting. He was now surrounded by a ton of people. And he was just finishing telling a story about how he and a fellow writer artist named Joe Simon had created Captain America. And a fan, he finished the story and he was like, yay! And a fan, very nervous, asked him, so how did you and Joe Simon create Captain America? And what was so cool is that he didn't belittle that fan. He didn't think, unless he told the same story with such loving, glowing detail, that he didn't make that person feel, that, oh, you asked a stupid question. You could tell that he loved what he did. He loved that the fans that he had supported what he did, and they loved him so much. And I said, if I'm ever lucky enough to have fans like Jack Kirby did, I hope I treat him as well as Jack Kirby did. So it was a big inspiration to me. This is the house. It's 28 Union Street, Dover, New Hampshire. It's now been, the lawn has actually been bulldozed and flat. It probably should have been when we lived there. But Peter and Janine had moved to this place in Dover, New Hampshire, which was not far from where I lived in Maine. And I finished working cooking lobsters one summer, and Pete and I had decided that we wanted to form a studio, and we called it Mirage Studios because it was a mirage. It was our living room, it wasn't a studio. And so I rented a room and I moved in. This was the living room in the house, and this was my first desk, which at that time I couldn't afford a desk. So I found sitting one of those, somebody's lawn with a sign that says free on it was this overstuffed chair. So I grabbed that and I used to draw it on a little blackboard. And Peter was sitting, he took the photo, he was sitting right across. And this is where the first turtles were created in November of 1983 to early 1984 with the drawings and stuff. This is the first turtle I was drawing. Michelangelo, before he was named Michelangelo. And my pitch to Pete was, we had this TV that didn't come in very good, and he'd always watch these shows that kind of annoyed me. He watched like A-Team and TJ Hooker and some of the stuff, so I felt that it was my job as a good friend to annoy him as much as possible while he was enjoying his TV shows. And so one night I said that Bruce Lee was an animal, what would be the stupidest animal? That's what the martial arts, so living turtle. So I did this sketch and I put it on his desk and I said, this is going to be the next big thing, Ninja Turtle. He laughed. This is our barometer, studio barometer. And so we did this sketch, changed a few things, and which made me laugh. And I said, that's great. And I thought, well, one, why not a group of them thinking, Fantastic Four or X-Men or something like that. So I did this drawing in pencil, and 4 turtles, each with different weapons, and I had that comic book logo that said Ninja Turtles on it, and I had done it in pencil. And then when he inked it in, he had Teenage Mutant to the title. And we, at this time, had submitted lots and lots of samples to try to get work from Marvel, DC, or anybody who did drawing comics. We had stacks of rejection letters, and we were lucky around the time that there was a real wonderful movement in self-publishing at that time. And we looked at this drawing and we said, this is the stupidest thing we've ever seen, and we love it dearly, so why don't we keep this one for ourselves? Instead of getting another rejection letter, let's come up with a story that tells how these characters became the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we started on that in, like I said, late '83, we took it in '84, breaking down the origins, who the bad guys were, where they lived, and it was a kind of a long love poem to all things we loved about comics, everything we liked about Marvel, DC, Batman, Daredevil, everything was sort of rolled into this one. And this is a fun thing that was released this year for the 40th anniversary, based on that drawing. As Playmates put out a set of toys, and basically the poses and the style of the legs were a little bit thicker and bigger in their shape. They hadn't worked out as much as you saw in later comics. But it was really fun that Playmates put out this special edition of the Turtle toys. That's the print. Of many things that I tell about the origin of the Turtles is as we came up with the different aspects of the story, who they were, where they lived, and a lot of it was based on some of you guys that you know that was a big fan of Daredevil. If you read Daredevil's origin, it's very much influenced the Turtles' origin, right up to the point where in Daredevil, young Matt Murdock is on a New York City street, sees a truck barreling down the street carrying radioactive waste, which I think still happens a lot in New York. And this blind man steps off the curb on the street and is about to get hit by this truck. So young Matt Murdock jumps into the street, saves this man, but when this truck slams on its brakes, canister comes loose from the truck, hits young Matt Murdock near the eyes, and that's where the Daredevil story basically ends at that point. They never say what happens to the canister or anything like that. So I was thinking, well, what if we had that canister continue bouncing down the street, and there's this poor boy standing in front of, unfortunately, an open sewer grating holding a terrarium with 4 turtles in it. So the canister gets that, smashes the glass, goes into the sewer next to a rat. And so Marvel probably should have sued our pants off. We in fact took it further where in Franklin was run out of Daredevil, we had an evil clan of ninjas called the Hand. We had to quit. Daredevil's mentor in a series was a character named Stick, named Splinter. So yeah, they should have sued us. But many other aspects, and I'll tell you the story about Shredder being created by doing dishes in a minute. But a lot of people ask where the names came from, and so when I was in school, in high school, I was not only a geek because I was, and that's at a time when geek was not a nice term, like thanks to Big Bang Theory, it's a cooler term, but I was a double geek because I liked history, especially art history. So me and a couple of my buddies that would be reading comic books and whatever, sitting way over in the corner of the lunchroom. And so when Pete and I were talking about names for characters, we were thinking, well, because of the Asian history and all that, within the story, the origin story, well, maybe they should have traditional Asian names. Cool. It's such a goofy concept. Well, maybe American names, Doc, Bob, Steve, or something, still not funny enough. And I said, what if we really went crazy and did it like one's named Leonardo and Michelangelo and Raphael, go all in Renaissance. And of course, Pete laughed, and so again, our barometer. So we said, so that's it. Then we had this period of about a week and a half where we had a discussion over the 4th name. Because Peter liked Donatello as a Renaissance artist a lot, and I liked there's a sculptor named Bernini, and I think I don't think it came down to a coin toss, but maybe for a collection. But so Donatello was almost named Bernini, but I liked him as a sculptor, and so that's where the name came from. And this was the premiere, May 5th, 1984. Very small. comic convention in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. A friend of ours, Ralph, who owned a comic store there and still does. And so we had timed our creation of the turtles, illustrating the turtles together, passing the pages back and forth. We had found a printer locally that would print them. We got the money to print the first issue through early forms of crowdfunding. His name was Quentin, my uncle Quentin. We put a little pitch of how he was going to make his money back by investing $1,200 in our comic. He wrote a check, probably knowing he'd never get paid back, but he still wrote the check. And so we timed it to meet this release date, and that's when the first issue came out. We made sure we invited lots of friends and family around, so it looked like we had people around our table. We were busy. But that's where the first issue is premiered. And I just tell the Shredder story just before I go on, because it's funny, is while we were working on the first issue, was like we said, we don't want a bad guy, we want him to be this, he's going to be kind of like Darth Vader and samurai and all this stuff and all these spikes on. And we tried a couple drawings, and so Janina cooked dinner one night, and we were doing dishes, so he was washing, I was drying one of those cheese graters with the little triangular things. I was drying off the inside of it, and I sort of had it on my arm so you can see the graters here. And I was like to Pete, I said, man, could you imagine a bad guy with a weapon like this? He would like literally shred your skin off. And he goes, the shredder. So, there are no stupid ideas. Just the inspiring creators out there. This is kind of a funny story. I was showing some bits and pieces of turtle history. Besides Jack Kirby, another artist I was hugely influenced by is a guy named Richard Corbin. He was an underground artist and was sort of a self-publishing kind of guy, and I got to work with him on a short story. And this was the first color story that we did in Turtles history. It's in issue number 7. It was just fun to, again, work with one of your heroes that was such an inspiration. This is fun. Look at that guy trying to grow a mustache. That's about 70 pounds ago. But this is the first year we were at San Diego Comic-Con, and where we were lucky enough to meet Jack Kirby. But that was we were in it. We were so happy at this time because we had now had put out Turtles issue 2, Turtles issue 3. We were working on the next one. We were now making enough money to cover our rent, and we were drawing comics full time. So this is really where everything that came after this. This is where the dream came true for us in so many ways. I love showing this for a number of reasons. It's like back in the early days of the Turtles, most people didn't know who the Turtles were when you do these early conventions, and so they said, well, we don't understand the Turtles, but could you draw one of them that looks like Wolverine? And so we spent half our conventions drawing the Turtles as Marvel characters or DC characters, $5 sketches, $10 sketches, and then the last day of the show would take whatever money we had made and run around buy all these comics that were missing from our collection. So we did this in 1984 as a tribute to all that stuff. And it was really fun to do that stuff. Here's my buddy Pete. So this was we had gotten together. And Pete's favorite thing in the world is ice cream, and so every time I go visit him in Massachusetts, we go somewhere. Usually this is a place called the Williamsburg General Store, and they have really good ice cream, homemade ice cream. So Pete and I would get together, and he's just, it's like, when I look at that, I think, it takes me right back to the earliest days of the creation, because we were two big goofballs, and still are, all these years later. Just love what we did, and lucky we've been in our career. I love showing it. Actually, I signed a couple of these. This was a cover that I did for Pete and I did for a magazine called Amazing, Comics Interview, and the first time we'd been interviewed, we were on the cover of a comic book review magazine, and I had a funny idea because if you go to KevinEastmanStudios.com, we sell hats and T-shirts and all kinds of goofy stuff. But I just felt this design was in the original design. I had Donatello pointing at me and like, hey, look, we're on the cover. And he said, hey, look, there's the logo. And I just said, wouldn't it be funny if he was pointing towards a fan's head? And I said, hey, look, there's his head. This is I would like showing this piece because it's a funny piece in a book that came out earlier this year. And IDW has been the publisher of the Turtles for a long time, and they do such fantastic work with all the reprints and collecting those oversized collections and stuff. And we did this collection earlier this year, which was all the covers that Peter and I did together. It went through all the Mirage covers and the Archie covers and all those things. And so this was the cover that I did. I passed the design back and forth with Peter, so there's like parts of issue 2, issue 9, Casey. You know, there's so many different things that we used to piece together this one cover. But it's a fun book of behind the scenes of seeing what Peter and I did, because a lot of people back in the day, they go, well, who writes and who draws? And we both write and we both draw. And a lot of times we pass the drawings back and forth to finish them together. So it sort of shows who did what and how much fun we had back in the day. This was a really fun series that we did. I don't know if you saw the Turtles Batman crossover. It was one of those things that I had actually pitched a Turtles Commandy crossover that I mentioned earlier. And DC said, well, nobody really remembers Commandy. Why don't you do Turtles Batman? And we were like, we didn't know that was on the table. Because Batman was I like characters like Batman and Daredevil and Captain America and stuff, so that was a big influence. So I got to work with the incredible James Tinian who wrote, and Freddie Williams who drew that series. But this was a fun piece that me and Freddie and another artist, turtle artist named John Summerbear from Australia, we did this print of Turtles and Batman together in these multiple universes. So, you guys heard of Last Ronin? Have you heard of that? Last Ronin, I'd like to show you, it's really been a really bizarre renaissance for us, and the coolest way is that, when Peter and I were working together some of the early years, like 84, 85, 86, we've just gotten at the end of 86, heading into 87, we got through and completed a big story arc, which was the first 11 issues, plus a couple of one-shots on each of the Turtles that we were trying to think of. We'd wrapped up a big story arc, so we were thinking, like, where do we go from here? And we had this idea of thinking, like, well, what if we set a story that was set 30 years in the future, like a crazy year like 2017. It was like the final story, like sort of the end, if you will, from our first issue 1. And so we wrote a 23, 24 page synopsis. I'll show you some of those. These are some of my favorite images from the first cover, one of my friends Simon Bisley did. And this is some notes that I made on top of the original notes that we made. So this 23, 24 page outline set in the future and what was going to happen. And we hadn't even titled it at that point. And that was the same year, 1987, the same year that they launched the cartoon shows, the toys that came out in 1988. And so suddenly, Pete and I's time drawing comics full time, we spent now, because we owned and controlled every aspect of all things Turtles. So we were now spending better than 60, 70% of our time doing the management of the Turtles and what was to be done with the cartoon shows. We worked on all 288 cartoon shows, we worked on all live action films. Pretty much anything you saw from 1987 to late 1990s was Pete and I had full control and worked on all of that stuff. So this idea that we had for the final Turtle story was set aside for 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years, and 10 years, and eventually we never got to do that. So fast forward to the Turtles being sold. Viacom now bought them, I think, in 2009, and I started working with IDW on their comic series. It came out first in 2011, and we suddenly found ourselves heading into 2019 where we're hitting 100 issues. And Tom and I were talking about, well, we worked on now 100 issues, where should we go from here? And I said, I've got this idea that Pete and I wrote back in 87, which now was 2 years after we had originally said it, So it's like it was originally set in 2017, the future, right? And now we're in 2018 into 2019. And I said, let's adapt the story and take it to the next level, set it 20 years in the future, and we'll adapt it and started working on this. And we pitched it to Nickelodeon, and Nickelodeon originally was like, well, I don't know, but IDW loved it, and so they greenlit it, and we felt that I wanted to be a story that I controlled every aspect of it, like the way Pete and I used to back in the old days. I said it's going to be really more violent than the regular issues. It's going to be oversized, which fans hated immediately because they couldn't find comic bags for them. 40 issues apiece, big fight scenes, and I said it's going to be the quote-unquote the final Turtle story. And they, kudos to Nickelodeon, again, who owns everything. They said, you do what you think's right. And so I went in and did stuff. These are the first sketches that I did of Michelangelo. No spoilers, I'm guessing at this point it's Michelangelo was the last one. And a lot of people ask, even today, like I think, actually this weekend I've answered a number of times, like, why did you choose Michelangelo? And to me it was one, he was the first turtle ever drawn, as you saw. And also that he had been established over time to be kind of the more laid-back, fun-loving, jokester kind of thing. So to me it was really interesting as a story device to say, the more purest and innocent and fun-loving member of the Turtles has to travel such a great, painful distance to become that implement of redemption and vengeance, and finally ending this blood feud after, after all these years. And so I started thinking, like, what would Michelangelo look like? And this is the kind of detail I do in some of my, a lot of stories that I do is like, here's some of the first sketches, but I wanted to break down, this is every piece of clothing that he would wear to make him, give him the look that he would look like the last Ronin. See some of the first sketches back in 2020. And then I was thinking of the first issue's cover I was developing, setting all the layouts and the design set for the sets. I was trying to think of what would be the first perfect cover, and there's a movie called, whoops, I thought I had a slide in. There's a movie called The Unforgiven, movie, and it's got a great poster with him standing from behind, and he's got his hand behind his back, and he's got a gun. And I just like the red moon sort of sunset, but because when you started reading the first issue, you wouldn't know who he was, so you would see this turtle from the back, and you'd see all the weapons of the other turtles, and so that was the first initial design of Mikey that went on to do this. Here's some of the artists that we've been lucky enough to work on the series. Actually, the series is drawn by two brothers from Mexico City, the Esposa brothers. They work for me in heavy metal, fantastic artists, and these guys are so incredible that they are identical twins. They grew up in an orphanage. They love comic books. They draw all the time, and they literally will draw the same drawing at the same time. They like literally share one brain. Like, you actually watch them work, and like, one of the, Esau and Isaac, and somebody would be drawing something, and one would go, do it, and they create this beautiful work of art. And then Ben Bishop, who's here in the show, is doing the flashback sequences from this. But the last runner was a surprising hit for us. We loved the story so much. We told a story that was deeply emotional, not only to tell, heartbreaking in some cases, but we want to tell it respectfully, the way Pete and I might have done it, and we worked with such an incredible team to bring that to life. And I think just about every other person that's come through my line and our lines, we've signed a copy of the last run, so we appreciate your support. It's been so much fun. I want to show a couple of these. These are when the success of the first last run series came out. People wanted us to do more, so we had this idea, and it's actually set up in the actual last run in the first series. This is the period where Michelangelo goes to Japan. Before he comes back to New York, there's a 16-year period where he sort of travels with Splinter's journal, learning to become this angel of vengeance, if you will, and shows up in New York City 16 years later, which issue 1 picks up. So we did a series called the last one of the Lost Years, which was came on us now, like, collected, which sort of shows that journey that took them from there to there. This is a fun piece. I love going back to Turtles history, and I'm doing some of the covers for some of the series. This is a Craig Farley cover I love that I adapted into with Freddie Williams, one of the things that we set up at the last page of last order number 1. You see April and Casey Marie, named after her father, Casey Jones, with these 4 turtles in a terrarium, and as the next generation, we never thought we'd get a chance to tell that story. So with last one and 2, we've been exploring the new turtles. I don't know if you guys have seen some of that series. It's been really fun to do and develop the characters and try to breathe life into something that was that doesn't take anything away from what we've done before, but sort of further the things that we loved about them. And I love, I feel like the just naming the turtles was one of the things that sort of furthers the organic nature of creating something pure, because the original turtles happened by accident. These were more quote-unquote manufactured. When it came time to name them, Tom and I were like, well, how do you come up with a name? You know, famous scientists, you know, famous bakers, you know what I mean? Just sort of how to come up with interesting names for these characters. And one of the things that Tom mentioned, it'd be like, you know, remember Star Trek when they had like, you know, Picard would go, number one, engage, and we're like, I love the name of one of them we called number one, but in Casey Marie, who names them, would they not be all number one in her heart, because she's kind of their mom and sensei. And so the names of the turtles, Mojo, Una, Gi, and Uno, Moja, they're all number one in different languages. So they're all number one in our heart, so they're all named after number one. So that's the original. So if you get a chance to check out the new series, last one or two, you'll get a kick out of it. I love showing these last couple of comparisons. This one is, I did this drawing for Peter's folks back in 1984. Lovely people. It was a group of, this is what the turtles looked like in 84. I like showing this cover, but that's I like showing this cover because this was the first Turtles cover that we ever did in color. And original Turtle stories, the Turtle issues were larger in size and two-color cover. And so we actually got so many complaints from people to switch up to a smaller size. We went to a regular comic book size and did this one in color. And at this point, the Turtles were out of space. And Pete and I were doing a massive love poem to all things Star Wars and George Lucas. So if you look in the lower corner there, that's the medical robot from Empire Strikes Back. So you can see lots of characters from Star Wars. Lucas probably should have sued us too. But I like showing, going back to this one I gave to the parents, which was to this one, which was 2014. It was around the 30th anniversary, and they worked out a little bit. Characters have evolved, and this is one of my favorite pieces towards the end of issue, getting towards the end of issue 100 at IDW, because we had this great opportunity when that series came out and you guys started supporting it, buying the issues. We not only brought back all of the key characters from different Turtle universes, we would keep them true to what they originally were created, but reinvent them a little bit, a little to the left, a little to the right. But this is, I want to do, based on the Jim Lee X-Men cover, I wanted to try to fit every single character in the Turtles IDW universe in one piece. This was really fun to do, that we got to have such a great run, 100 issues, and then move on to the last run. But that's where that universe, which still continues, ends. But I like to stop on this picture because I'll go back to where we started at the beginning. Is this is pretty much what I get to do every day. You know, it's like before Courtney and I got on a plane to come here on Friday. I was literally drawing before we jumped in the car and drove to the airport at 12 o'clock. And when I get home the day after tomorrow, I'm going to go back to my drawing table and draw more turtle stories. And I love to say, respectfully and kindly, that I have the best job because I have the best fans ever. So I get to do this because of you, and I thank you for that. It means a lot. So usually, as my wife says, I talk too much, and I do. So if there's anything that I've left out or anything you think of, you want to ask me, you come by the table again. We're going to be there this afternoon until the show closes. But we got enough time for some questions, right?
Yeah, we can take a few questions. We've got maybe 5-10 minutes. Yeah, I saw one hand there.
So if anybody has any questions,
right here. Right. Yeah, jump right here. And if you've got a question, if you want to come line up here in the middle, so I think those first three that we called out, if y'all come up, you can come right over here, and we'll get through as many as we can in the next 5-10 minutes or so. All right, yeah, hey, we've got a little last Ronin up here. Check this out. Hey, come on, let's let everybody see this outfit. Check that out. All right, well, what's your name?
Oliver. So what is the third movie going to be? Is it going to be live action or like computer animated or stuff like that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things in the works, movie-wise, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah, just repeat the question or something.
Yeah.
You asked about the live-action movie, so my hearing's a little off today.
Yeah, I wanted to know what the next movie was going to be, live action, animated, what that looked like.
Actually, we're very lucky because we're going to be able to do both. Because I hope you guys love the Mutant Mayhem movie that came out last year. I really love that movie. We had so much fun, For my part, I get to be a voice. I was a good human to help Splinter in the scene. I get to be a voice in it and stuff. But there was but I love Seth Rogen, especially. I talked a number of times with the director, a guy named Jeff Rose. He grew up as one of those Turtle fans that had all the toys, wore the Halloween costume, and he's such a huge fan. So the movie came from such a place of great love and passion, and I thought it was really clever, really funny. The things that they changed and adjusted, the different people. I just loved every part of it, and I loved being able to be one of the voices in that movie. But at the end of the movie, they show that scene where the evil character says, "Get me the shredder," and they flash to the back cylinder of the shredder. So they're doing an animated movie as a follow-up to that movie, which I believe is 2025, the end of 25. And then at the same time, because of the success of Last Ronin and a lot of the fans here that are older audiences want to have an edgier, more, I guess, R-rated version of the Turtles, they've decided to produce Last Ronin movie, and that's going to be live action. So, animated in 2025, live action in 2026.
Thank you, Oliver. And what's your name?
RJ. Hey Kevin, just mentioned your table. It's good to see you. My question is, do you have any favorite mutant villains maybe? Who's your favorite?
Oh, favorite mutant villains. The thing I love so much about it's funny, I was just writing it's kind of some text and introduction for the new role-playing game collection that's coming out, which I'm so excited about. You guys supported these heat out there, it's so fantastic. But in the Turtles universe, especially in the early days, we have lots of characters and lots of villains. We hadn't done a lot of mutant villains. In the role-playing game, that was the key to the whole role-playing game, was coming up with new mutant characters. And those characters, there was an evil, a mutant warthog and an evil rhino and all these other things that then translated to other Turtle universes like the cartoon series. And I love it that we can have so many of those mutant characters exist, and you can have fun with them in the Turtle universe, like the Mechanicals and things. But I just love Frank, man. I just, at the end of the day, it's like, it's not exactly a mutant animal, it's not this, but it's like, I love how Bebop and Rocksteady translated into that, but it was like, when the Utron, which are the original characters, the Crazy Ooze and the Black and White Turtle comics, when they made Krang this funky, twisted character from Dimension X, I just loved it. He made me laugh so often. So Krang would be one of my favorite big villains, I guess. So thanks.
Thank you, RJ. And what's your name?
Elizabeth. I was going to ask, why did the turtles at the beginning have all red masks?
Why did the Turtles mutate and have what?
All have red masks in the beginning.
Have all what?
Why did they all have red masks in the
Actually,
beginning?
Too much heavy metal music when I was a kid. No, that's a great question, because what's interesting is that the original comic book started as black and white, and even the original covers before issue 5, which I showed was the first color cover, all of them had 2 color covers. So when we first did them with a color cover, I just thought, well, the inside's going to be black and white, so it doesn't really matter to separate them in any different way. And so, yeah, sure, they have all red bandanas, because the inside's going to be all black and white. But it wasn't until the cartoon series came out, and we were working with the guys working on the toys and the cartoon show, and they said, well, how can you tell them apart? And we were like, the weapons, duh. And they said, well, it'd be great if we came up with a way to tell them apart a little bit more easily. And Pete came up with the idea of the different color bandanas, which I thought was perfect. And so that was the black and white version, is why they were all red. And I love that they evolved with the cartoon series and the different color bandanas. It really fits their personality.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So what's your name? Simone, what's your question?
So the Scrapped movie that was before Ninja Turtles 4 in the 90s, do you say, in terms of the material that was in it, would you say The Last Ronin is a spiritual successor to that?
So would you say The Last Ronin is a spiritual success in comparison to the scrapped fourth movie that didn't happen in the 90s? So did The Last Ronin, give it that spiritual ongoing?
Yeah, it was funny that, we were lucky enough in the turtle history, is that, things like, I love the evolution of, like, say, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They have all these different dimensions and things like that, and that existed in the Marvel comics. Before, nothing, the turtles, we didn't create it, it had been created before, but I love that concept. I remember, like Spider-Man would have 5 different Spider-Man titles and set in different time periods and everything. So we felt very lucky in that in the early days we had the turtles black and white,